Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today I wanted to take a look at which national teams have only qualified for one international tournament in their entire history, as well as how they got on at those respective tournaments. Now, just for full disclosure, I'm only considering the World Cup and each confederation's respective international competitions. So for example, the Euros, the Copa America, the African Cup of Nations, etc, etc. And not any regionalised tournaments such as the Caribbean Cup or the AFC Challenge Cup. Nor will I be considering the Olympic Games, since it's basically become an under-23 tournament over the last few decades, and by extension, any under-21, under-20, under-19 or under-17 tournaments. Essentially, the question I'm posing is which nations have only made it to either one World Cup or one major continental tournament. So if a European nation, for example, has qualified for the World Cup and the Euros once apiece, they are ineligible to feature. I've probably made things a bit more complicated than they actually are, but I'm sure it'll make sense as the video goes on. There are 25 or so nations to get through, so I won't waste any more of your time, apart from by reminding you that if you enjoy this video, of course, please don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. But without any further ado, let's have a look at every single national team who has only qualified for one major international tournament in their entire history. Albania, Euro 2016. We're going in alphabetical order country by country, so we begin with Albania. The Balkan nation have been competing in UEFA and FIFA recognised competitions since the 1960s, but have mostly been reduced to also rounds throughout most of their history. However, they have made great strides in recent years, having come third in both of their last two World Cup qualification campaigns and only missing out on a playoff spot for the 2022 finals in Qatar by 2 points behind Poland. Their finest hour came in 2015, when they came second in their qualification group for Euro 2016, benefiting from the tournament's expansion to 24 teams with automatic entrance into the finals. They put up a decent fight, only losing 1-0 to Switzerland and holding out until injury time against hosts and eventual runners-up, France, before beating Romania in their last game 1-0 to finish third. Unfortunately, they were the worst performing team who finished third in their respective groups at the finals, meaning they missed out on a place in the round of 16. Given the progress they have made in recent times though, don't be surprised to see them benefiting from the World Cup's expansion to 48 teams and making their World Cup bow at some point soon. Bangladesh, the 1980 AFC Asian Cup. Much like most of Southern Asia, Bangladesh is absolutely infatuated with cricket, with that obsession reducing football to a secondary status. This is reflected in their standings in the FIFA World Rankings, as they are currently 189th in the world, having sunk as low as 197th as recently as 2018. One notable feat that they do hold, though, is that they qualified for the first ever tournament that they participated in qualifying for, namely the 1980 AFC Asian Cup, in spite of an internal conflict a couple of years earlier that had seen a number of their key players quit the national team altogether. That being said, they only actually won one game in qualifying, a 3-2 success over Afghanistan, but thanks to two teams automatically qualifying from their three-team group, that victory was enough to put them into the tournament. Things didn't start off too badly, as they only narrowly lost 3-2 to North Korea and 1-0 to Syria, but in their final two games against China and Iran, they conceded 13 goals without scoring a single one themselves, as three separate players scored hat-tricks against them. Since then, they haven't really come close to qualifying for another tournament, and in qualification for the 2023 AFC Asian Cup, they only won one out of the 13 games that they played, namely a narrow 1-0 win over fellow minnows Laos in the first round. Belize, the 2013 Gold Cup. The process to get into the Gold Cup, CONCACAF's equivalent to the Euros, was rather convoluted back in 2013, as teams were split up into Caribbean and Central American zones to see who will join powerhouses Canada, Mexico and the United States at the tournament proper. The teams who finished in the top 5 at the Copa Centroamericana would be granted automatic passage to the 2013 Gold Cup, and Belize were one of them, although given that there were only 7 teams competing at that tournament, Belize only needed to win one game to make it to the major showpiece event. They went into the finals as underdogs, and it showed out on the pitch, as the USA thrashed them 6-1 in their opening game, before Costa Rica edged them out 1-0 and Cuba dished out a 4-0 humbling. They're yet to come close again, having only won 5 Gold Cup qualification matches in their entire history, and they've never made the final round of World Cup qualifying either. Bermuda, the 2019 Gold Cup. By 2019, the process to qualify for the Gold Cup had changed significantly as a result of the introduction of the CONCACAF Nations League, where teams would play 4 games in a massive 34-team league. similar to how the format for the Champions League will be from 2024-25 onwards. Bermuda were one of the teams who received a favourable draw, as despite a shock 1-0 loss to Aruba, they were able to overcome Dominican Republic 3-1, thrash minnows St Martin 12-0, and cause a shock of their own by defeating El Salvador 1-0. 8 teams ended up tied on 9 points, but in large part thanks to their annihilation of St Martin, Bermuda had the second best goal difference out of all of them, meaning they finished in 5th and qualified automatically for the newly expanded 16-team Gold Cup. Once at the finals, they were put in a group with Costa Rica and Haiti, meaning their backs were up against the wall before a ball had been kicked, and true to expectations, they lost to both of them. However, they avoided the wooden spoon by beating Nicaragua 2-0, with former Huddersfield striker Naki Wells bagging the second, to give the Gombe Warriors their only major international tournament win to date. Bosnia and Herzegovina, the 2014 World Cup. Bosnia and Herzegovina hold the unique distinction of being the only national team whose only appearance at a major international tournament has come at a World Cup, as they have failed to qualify for the Euros in their post-independence history. It's not for the want of trying though, as they fell in the playoffs in qualification for Euro 2012, 2016 and 2020, but the Dragons' only appearance at a major tournament came at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, when they finished ahead of Greece on goal difference to qualify automatically. This came during what was undoubtedly their golden age, with the likes of Edin Dzeko, Miralem Pjanic, Asmir Begovic and Senad Lulic all at the peak of their powers. Sadly, they suffered 2 narrow losses to Argentina and Nigeria, which saw them eliminated, rendering their 3-0 win over Iran in their final game memorable but futile. With the likes of Dzeko and Pjanic now on the decline, it may take another couple of superstars to get Bosnia back into major competitions, but they do have a playoff spot guaranteed for the qualification for Euro 2024 by virtue of winning their Nations League group, so don't rule it out just yet. Botswana, 2012 African Cup of Nations. Our first nation from Africa comes in the form of Botswana, who've only been attempting to qualify for international tournaments since the 1990s. They earned their shot at the big time in 2011, when they surprisingly topped a qualifying group containing Tunisia and Togo, despite scoring just 7 goals in 8 games. Given they had never participated in a tournament before, they were immediately put into the lowest pot for the group stage draw, which saw them pitted up against eventual semi-finalists Ghana and Mali, as well as Guinea. Ironically though, it would be against Guinea where they put up their worst showing, as they only lost by 1-goal margins against the top 2, Ghana and Mali, yet against to-be-eliminated Guinea, they were annihilated 6-1. They are of course yet to return, and they're already eliminated from the 2023 African Cup of Nations with 1 game left to go in their qualifying group, extending their wait for another international tournament to 13 years at least. Burundi, 2019 African Cup of Nations. Thanks to AFCON expanding to 24 nations from the 2019 edition onwards, a number of new teams will be able to take their places at the top table of African football. 3 nations would make their debuts at that year's tournament, including Burundi, who finished above Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's Gabon to come in second in their group and make it to the tournament. Their 2 most recognisable names were former Newcastle midfielder Gaio Bigirimana and former West Brom and Stoke striker Saido Berahino, who had switched his allegiances over to Burundi the previous year after failing to receive an England cap. He didn't inspire them to any success though, as in a group containing Nigeria, Guinea and fellow debutants Madagascar, they failed to pick up a single point or score a single goal. They may well get another chance at the big time very soon though, as they have a winner-takes-all clash with Cameroon in September to determine who qualifies for the 2023 AFCON in the Ivory Coast. Cambodia, the 1972 AFC Asian Cup. Moving back to Asia, we profile Cambodia's exploits in the 1972 AFC Asian Cup, back when they were known as the Khmer Republic. With 4 out of 6 teams from the Central Zone qualifying for the finals in Thailand, all Cambodia had to do was not lose to Hong Kong and they would make it through. And sure enough, they won 2-0 to book their place. However, they wouldn't suffer an immediate elimination in the group stages, as they thrashed Kuwait 4-0 to progress to the semi-finals, although that was where they narrowly exited at the hands of eventual winners Iran, who beat them 2-1. They would then lose the 3rd place playoff on penalties to Thailand, but their 4th place finish is the best that anyone has managed in this video thus far. Nowadays though, Cambodia have well and truly been reduced to the status of also-rans, conceding 99 goals across the last 2 AFC Asian Cup qualifying campaigns and only winning 5 World Cup qualification matches in their entire history. Comoros, the 2021 African Cup of Nations. Comoros' exploits at the 2021 AFCON brought them worldwide notoriety, especially after one unfortunate turn of events prior to the most important game in their history. They relied on a stubborn defence that only conceded 2 goals in their first 5 group qualifying games, and their only loss came after they'd already made it to the finals in Cameroon, so it didn't make any difference. The fairy tale would go on though, as they stunned Ghana 3-2 in their final group game to put themselves into 3rd place and, as one of the 4 best performing 3rd place teams, earn themselves a rite of passage into the round of 16. However, they had been struck down by a COVID-19 outbreak, which affected all 3 of their registered goalkeepers, meaning that for their round of 16 clash against Cameroon, their left back had to go in goal. Their task was then made 10 times harder when captain Najim Abdou was sent off just 10 minutes in, but they held their own and even scored through a wonderful free kick from Yusuf Mchangama, albeit they still lost 2-1. No matter, in spite of all the hardships they faced on top of their status as perennial underdogs, they had done their nation proud, although they failed to replicate the heroics of 2023 as they didn't qualify. It would also be remiss of me not to mention that following the aforementioned Cameroon-Comoros game, 8 people tragically lost their lives in a crush outside the stadium, so of course may all of those who died in the incident rest in peace. I cannot imagine and never want to entertain the thought of going to a football match, let alone an international game, and never coming home. So I thought I might as well bring that up because, as I say, it would be very remiss of me not to do so. Finland, Euro 2020. Another team whose sole international tournament was marred by a tragedy, Finland were the opponents against whom Christian Eriksen suffered a cardiac arrest, although mercifully he made it out alive and is now back playing at Manchester United. Back to Finland though, they came in 2nd place behind eventual Euro 2020 winners Italy in their qualifying group and earned themselves a historic entrance into the competition following a 3-0 win over Liechtenstein, powered by the goals of Teemu Pukki. They ended up winning that game against the Danes following its restart after the incident, with Joao Poyanpalo scoring what would turn out to be the only goal the Finns would score during the entire tournament. A 1-0 loss to Russia and a 2-0 defeat against Belgium put them in 3rd place on goal difference behind a resurgent Denmark, but they didn't end up as one of the best 3rd place sides, meaning their maiden adventure into an international tournament ended at the first hurdle. French Guiana, the 2017 Gold Cup. The only nation in this video who are not FIFA members, French Guiana are an overseas department of France, and since they aren't autonomous, they can't be granted access into FIFA. But that status does not bar them from entering into CONCACAF, and after being an affiliate member since the 1990s, they were finally granted full membership in 2013. 4 years on, they took part in their first ever international tournament, although not without a slice of good fortune, as a game against Bermuda was postponed owing to a waterlogged pitch when Bermuda were winning 1-0, and in the rearranged match, French Guiana won 3-0. Once they'd made it to the finals though, they looked like fish out of water, as they lost 4-2 to Costa Rica and then 3-0 to Canada. However, they were denied what would have been a shock point against Honduras, as they fielded former Chelsea winger Florent Malouda, who was deemed to have been ineligible to play for French Guiana, having already won 80 caps for France, meaning Honduras were awarded a 3-0 win by default. Gambia, the 2021 African Cup of Nations. Back to the 2021 AFCON we go to look at Gambia, who may well not be eligible to be a part of this video in a month's time, as should they avoid a heavy defeat against the Congo in their final qualifying game, they will also make it to the 2023 edition. For the time being though, since it hasn't been confirmed yet, they remain one tournament wonders, having made it to the delayed 2021 finals in Cameroon by topping a group containing Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gabon. Their good form continued at the tournament itself, as they went unbeaten in the group stages, only finishing in 2nd behind Mali thanks to a slightly inferior goal difference, and then they overcame Guinea 1-0 in the round of 16 to set up a showdown with host Cameroon in the quarters. Sadly, that would be where the curtains came down on their adventure, as a 2-0 loss sent the Scorpions packing. Guyana, the 2019 Gold Cup. Much like Bermuda, Guyana were beneficiaries of the Gold Cup's expansion to 16 teams for the 2019 tournament, as well as its short qualification process, as they beat San Martin, not to be confused with Sin Martin, Puerto Rico, and Barbados, offsetting a loss to Cuba. However, if it wasn't for Barbados fielding an ineligible player in their game against Guyana, which originally ended 2-2, they wouldn't have made it to the finals, as 7 points would only have been good enough for 12th place, 2 spots outside of the Gold Cup qualification spots. However, you could have been forgiven for thinking that they wished they hadn't bothered turning up at all, as they conceded 8 goals across 2 games against the USA and Panama, meaning that by the time they played out a meaningless 1-1 draw with Trinidad and Tobago, they were packing their bags for the next flight home, and are, as of now, yet to return. Kyrgyzstan, the 2019 AFC Asian Cup. Now, Kyrgyzstan have already booked their place at the 2023 AFC Asian Cup, so they will soon relinquish their status of being one tournament wonders. However, since they have only actively participated in the 2019 AFC Asian Cup in their entire history as of the time of this recording, where they made it to the round of 16 before being eliminated by the host the United Arab Emirates, I thought I'd give them a quick mention. Madagascar, the 2019 African Cup of Nations. A country that is probably more famous for the film trilogy of the same name, and for a game which ended 149-0 since the losing team deliberately scored 149 own goals in protest against refereeing decisions, Madagascar had their turn in the sun for all the right footballing reasons in 2019, when they made it to their maiden AFCON tournament after finishing second behind Senegal in their qualifying group. They were put into the same group as the aforementioned Burundi, as well as Nigeria and Guinea, but surprised everyone by not only going unbeaten and beating Nigeria, but topping it outright. The shocks didn't end there though, as in the round of 16, they overcame the Democratic Republic of Congo via a penalty shootout, but that would be as good as it got for the Madagascans, as a strong Tunisia side convincingly beat them 3-0 in the quarters. They are yet to return, having already fallen in the qualifying rounds for the 2023 edition. Mauritius, the 1974 African Cup of Nations. Nowadays, it's fair to say that Mauritius are minnows of the African game, currently ranked 180th in the world by FIFA, below the likes of Montserrat, South Sudan, and Tahiti. They couldn't even make it into the group stages of qualifying for AFCON 2023 after falling at the first hurdle to Sao Tome y Principe 4-3 on aggregate, meaning their wait for another major tournament will extend past the 50-year mark. That's because their only major tournament appearance to date came all the way back in 1974, as following a thrashing of Lesotho and a penalty shootout success over Tanzania in qualifying, they were one of the 8 teams to participate in that year's AFCON in Egypt. Sadly, as has become a common theme throughout this video, they failed to make an impression, losing all 3 of their games to the Congo, eventual winners Zaire, and Guinea by a combined score of 8-2. I also learned while researching them that they have only won one World Cup qualifying match in their entire history during the 2006 process, and as a result of their constant early exits, they've only played 20 games across 8 attempts. Don't expect to see them challenging for a qualification spot anytime soon, even with the World Cup growing to 48 teams as of 2026. Myanmar, the 1968 AFC Asian Cup. If you told me before going into researching for this video that the best performing team out of anyone to feature would be lowly Myanmar, I wouldn't have believed you. But it's true. They were still called Burma when they won the Western Zone Group 2 in 1967, ahead of India, Cambodia and Pakistan, to make it to the 1968 AFC Cup finals in Iran. In those days, the tournament only contained a group stage, with each team playing each other once, and the winner of the group being the team who won the overall competition. They drew with China and beat Israel and Hong Kong, but a defeat against the flawless Iran side, who didn't drop a single point, ultimately proved to be their undoing, so they ended up with the silver medal behind the hosts. In the 55 years since, they have only attempted to qualify for the AFC Asian Cup 5 times and the World Cup 4 times, and they have come absolutely nowhere near close on any of those occasions. North Macedonia, Euro 2020. The former Yugoslav nation of North Macedonia has gone through a lot in recent times, including being forced to sign a Prespa agreement with Greece to change their name from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia to the Republic of North Macedonia, and attempts to block their access into the EU by Bulgaria, something which is still yet to be resolved. Amongst all this chaos, the national team has only got stronger and stronger, powered by the likes of Goran Pandev, Enis Bardi and Elif Elmas, and with news that one team out of those who competed in the Nations League D would be granted access to Euro 2020, they sensed an opportunity to make history. They won their Nations League group, earning them access to said playoffs, where they overcame Kosovo and Georgia to make it to Euro 2020 and put their country well and truly on the map. Although they put in some stubborn performances at the Pan-European finals, they lost 3-1 to Austria, 2-1 to Ukraine, and 3-0 to the Netherlands to make them the second worst performing country at the tournament, narrowly ahead of Turkey on goal difference. They would then come so close to making it to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar after stunning Euro 2020 winners Italy in the playoffs, but Portugal put an end to their aspirations, and after being drawn in a group with Italy, England and Ukraine to make it to Euro 2024, their chances do look slim, with only one win in 3 qualifying games so far. The Philippines, the 2019 AFC Asian Cup. I thought it was quite surprising that the Philippines have only made one international tournament in their history, especially since they've had former Chelsea youngster Phil Younghusband, his brother James, and ex-Cardiff City shotstopper Neil Etheridge to call upon over the last decade or so. But in what would turn out to be the last tournament that either of the Younghusbands participated in, they clearly put their heart and soul into trying to get the nation into the AFC Asian Cup, and thanks to a relatively easy qualifying group of Tajikistan, Nepal and Yemen, they succeeded. Unfortunately, they were put right up against it when the draw for the tournament proper came out, as they would have to contend with South Korea and China, as well as fellow debutants Kyrgyzstan. They only narrowly lost 1-0 to South Korea, but China put them back in their place with a comfortable 3-0 win. And even Kyrgyzstan were able to put 3 goals past them too, meaning the Azkals went home with no points to their name. They won't get a chance to put that right next year either, as they were eliminated by Palestine in the third round of qualifying for the delayed 2023 AFC Asian Cup that's going to be held in Qatar in January. Rwanda, the 2004 African Cup of Nations. Rwanda have only been attempting to make it to major international tournaments since the late 1990s, something which does make sense when you consider how much the country was devastated by the 1994 genocide, in which over 1 million people were killed. 10 years on from that, well, tragedy doesn't even come close to describing such an event. The national football team finally gave the nation something to smile about when they navigated their way through a group containing Uganda and Ghana, who would go on to qualify for the 2006 World Cup, to make it to the tournament in Tunisia. Back in the days when AFCON only contained 16 teams, it meant you had to finish in the top 2 to qualify for the knockout stages, and Rwanda put on a good show, beating the Democratic Republic of the Congo and drawing with Guinea, but a 2-1 loss to the hosts ultimately meant that their tally of 4 points was 1 point short of what they needed to make it through. They are out of contention to make it to the 2023 finals too, after picking up just 2 points from their 5 group stage matches so far. Singapore, the 1984 AFC Asian Cup. Singapore are one of 2 nations in this entire video who have never managed to go through the qualification process and make it to a major international tournament. That's because their sole appearance at the AFC Asian Cup came in 1984 when they were awarded hosting rights and thus qualified automatically. However, they didn't exactly put up a performance befitting of a host nation, as they could only score 3 times, with 2 of them coming in a routine 2-0 win over India, and lost to both China and the United Arab Emirates. Despite a credible draw with Iran, they hadn't done enough to finish in the top 2 of the group and, well, weren't sent packing because they were already on home soil, but you get the idea. They have, in fairness, come close to making it to both the AFC Asian Cup and the World Cup on a few occasions, most notably going unbeaten in 1996 AFC Asian Cup qualifying, but just falling short to Thailand. But they are yet to make a second appearance in the near 40 years since their month in the sun. South Yemen, the 1976 AFC Asian Cup. The second nation to have failed to qualify outright for a major international tournament is the only one in this video that no longer exists, in the form of South Yemen. The national team, which lasted from 1965 to 1989 whilst Yemen was split in 2, were drawn into Group 1 of 1976 AFC Asian Cup qualifying, but 4 of the 6 teams withdrew before the process began, so they qualified automatically alongside Kuwait without having to play a single game. Their lack of experience showed at the finals, as although they put in a credible showing against Iraq to only lose 1-0 thanks to an 84th minute winner from Kadim Wal, they fell to pieces against Iran, who managed to stick 8 goals past them without reply. It may well come as little surprise to discover that Iran went on to win the competition that year, and that South Yemen was subsequently eliminated without a goal or point to their name, and they failed to make another appearance at a major international tournament before the country's reunification in 1990. St Kitts Nevis, the 2023 Gold Cup. The most recent inclusion in this video is St Kitts Nevis, who won their CONCACAF Nations League C group to earn a shot at qualifying for the 2023 Gold Cup. They took that chance by the skin of their teeth, as they had to rely on penalties to get past Curaçao and French Guiana, but the Sugar Boys had finally made it to the big time after 30 years of trying. Where things slightly fell down for them is when they were drawn against the USA, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, and quite frankly, they were absolutely battered from pillar to post. Trinidad coasted past them 3-0, the USA tonked them 6-0, and Jamaica had a 5-goal haul of their own without conceding 1. Whilst they may be the most recent inclusion, they are also the worst performing one, and it remains to be seen whether they can buck that trend and make it back to the Gold Cup before too long. Mostly because the qualification process for the 2025 edition obviously hasn't started yet. St Vincent and the Grenadines, the 1996 Gold Cup. In what would be only their second attempt to make it to the Gold Cup in their entire history, St Vincent and the Grenadines managed to make it through to the final of the 1995 Caribbean Cup, safe in the knowledge that the 2 finalists would earn passage through to the following year's Gold Cup. Although they ended up being thrashed 5-0 by Trinidad and Tobago, it didn't matter, as the Vincy Heat would find themselves competing at North America's top table for the first time, and they were pitted up against Mexico and Guatemala. Sadly for them, the thrashings would continue on into the tournament proper, as Mexico comfortably swatted them aside by winning 5-0, and even Guatemala managed to put 3 goals past them without conceding a single goal in response. They are yet to make it through to the final round of World Cup qualifying in North America, and they are the 4th worst performing nation in the history of the Gold Cup, ahead of only Belize, Grenada, and the aforementioned St Kitts Nevis. Yemen, the 2019 AFC Asian Cup. Our final team in this video, and if you've made it all the way through then fair play to you, comes in the form of Yemen. And whilst I could have disregarded them on the grounds that South Yemen had made it to the 1976 AFC Asian Cup, I decided to include them since they are officially recognised as the continuation of North Yemen rather than South Yemen, if that makes sense. The country has been absolutely decimated by an ongoing humanitarian crisis and a Saudi blockade which multiple governments around the world seem to be supporting, including by proxy, my own. But the national team gave the country something to shout about when they made it to the 2019 AFC Asian Cup, making it through the same group as the Philippines. However, they also left their solitary appearance at a major international tournament without a goal or point to their name, as a 5-0 battering by Iran, a 3-0 defeat at the hands of Iraq, and a 2-0 loss to Vietnam sealed their fate. They could only win 1 game in 2023 AFC Asian Cup qualifying, meaning they won't have a chance to put in a better showing at January's finals in Qatar either. But just making it to the tournaments in 2019, in spite of all the odds being stacked against them and the chaos unfurling around them in their homeland, was an incredible achievement in and of itself, which they will forever have a right to be proud of. And that just about wraps up today's video, looking at all the national teams who have only qualified for 1 major international tournament in their entire history. If you enjoyed this video, of course, please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. You can also ring the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a video straight away, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the video, as well as any other future ideas you would like to see from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.